I'm standing behind the front desk of my guest house, sorting through reservation cards, when I hear the familiar creak of the wooden door. The afternoon light filters through the lace curtains, casting gentle shadows across the polished floor. I look up, and time stops. They're older now, much older. My mother's hair has turned silver, pulled back in the same tight bun she always wore, but her face is lined with years I wasn't there to witness. My father stands beside her, his shoulders more hunched than I remember, his hands clasped behind his back in that same nervous gesture. They're looking around my lobby with the cautious hope of people who need something they're not sure they deserve. They don't recognize me. 32 years. 32 years since they threw me out of their house with nothing but the clothes on my back, and a secret growing inside me. 32 years since my mother's voice cut through me like broken glass, telling me I was no daughter of hers. 32 years since my father couldn't even look at me as he closed the door. And now they're here, in my home, asking for work. Good afternoon, I say, my voice steady, despite the earthquake happening inside my chest. How can I help you? My mother steps forward, her voice smaller than I remember, worn thin by time and circumstance. We heard you might have work available. Cleaning, maintenance, anything really. We're good workers, and we don't need much. I nod, studying their faces. The pride is still there, but it's been tempered by something I've never seen in them before. Desperation. Real need, the kind that makes you swallow your dignity and ask strangers for help. Please, sit down, I tell them, gesturing to the comfortable chairs by the fireplace. Would you like some tea? As I move to the kitchen, muscle memory takes over. I know how they take their tea. My mother with 1 sugar, no milk. My father with milk, no sugar. I've carried these small details with me for over 3 decades. Treasures I couldn't bring myself to throw away even when everything else about them felt like poison in my veins. This is where I want to pause for a moment and ask you something. If you're finding this story meaningful, if it's touching something in your heart, please take a second to hit that like button. It helps more people find stories like this one, stories about resilience and second chances. And if you have your own story of overcoming impossible odds, I'd love to hear it in the comments below. But let me take you back to where this all began. To when I was 17, and my whole world cracked open like an egg. It was a Tuesday in March when I told them. I remember, because Tuesdays were my mother's laundry day, and the whole house smelled like bleach and fabric softener. I'd been carrying this secret for 2 months, my body changing in ways I tried to hide under loose sweaters and careful posture, but I couldn't hide anymore. I was showing. I found them in the kitchen after dinner. My father was reading his newspaper, the way he did every evening, his reading glasses perched on the end of his nose. My mother was wiping down the counters with the kind of methodical precision she brought to everything in her life. The fluorescent light above the sink buzzed softly, casting everything in that harsh, unforgiving glow. I need to tell you something, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The newspaper rustled, as my father lowered it. My mother's wiping slowed, then stopped. They both looked at me, and I saw something in their faces shift, as if they already knew what I was going to say. I told them I was pregnant. The silence that followed was deafening. It stretched between us like a chasm, filled with everything we'd never said to each other, all the ways we'd failed to connect over the years. My mother's face went white, then red, then white again. My father folded his newspaper with mechanical precision, his movements sharp and controlled. Who, my mother asked, her voice cutting through the air like a blade. When I told them, when I explained what had happened, how it had happened, they didn't believe me. They looked at me like I was a stranger, like I was something shameful that had somehow found its way into their clean, ordered home. You're lying, my mother said, her voice trembling with rage and something else, maybe fear. You're lying to protect yourself, to make excuses for your behavior. I tried to explain again, tried to make them understand, but the words felt like stones in my throat. My father stood up from his chair, his face a mask I'd never seen before. Pack your things, he said quietly. You have until morning. I begged them to listen, to believe me, to help me. But they'd already turned away. My mother went back to her wiping, her movements jerky and violent now, as if she could scrub away what I'd told them. My father retreated behind his newspaper, building a wall between us with black ink and white paper. I spent that night in my childhood bedroom, touching everything I'd have to leave behind. My books, my photographs, the stuffed bear I'd had since I was 5. I packed what I could carry in an old suitcase, and when morning came, I stood at the front door with everything I owned in the world. My mother handed me $50 and a brown paper bag with 2 sandwiches. She wouldn't look at me. My father stood in the doorway behind her, his face stone. "Don't come back," she said. And I didn't. The first few weeks were the hardest. I slept in shelters when I could get a bed, on park benches when I couldn't. I learned which restaurants threw away the best food, which gas stations let you use their bathrooms without buying anything, which libraries stayed open late enough to provide a few hours of warmth and safety. I found work washing dishes at a small diner on the outskirts of town. The owner, a tired woman with kind eyes, asked no questions when I showed up every morning at 5, my hands already red and raw from the work. She paid me in cash and let me eat the leftover pie at the end of my shift. It wasn't much, but it was honest work, and it kept me alive. My belly grew, and with it, my determination. I was going to survive this. I was going to prove them wrong. I was going to build something better from the ashes of what they'd burned down. That's when I met him. He came into the diner on a rainy Thursday morning, ordered coffee and sat in the corner booth by the window. He was older than me, maybe in his 50s, with silver threading through his dark hair, and lines around his eyes that spoke of both laughter and sorrow. There was something gentle about him, something that made me feel safe, in a way I hadn't felt in months. His name was, well, names don't matter in this story. What matters is that he saw me, really saw me. Not the pregnant teenager washing dishes, not the girl who'd been thrown away by her own family, but me. The person I was underneath all the pain and fear. We started talking during my breaks. He told me about his wife, who'd passed away 2 years earlier, about how he was trying to figure out how to live without her. I told him about my situation, about the baby coming, about having nowhere to go. He listened without judgment, without trying to fix everything, or tell me what I should have done differently. One afternoon, as my shift was ending, he made me an offer that changed everything. "I have a house," he said, stirring sugar into his coffee with careful precision. "It's old, needs a lot of work, but it's got good bones. I've been thinking about turning it into a guest house, maybe a bed and breakfast. I could use help with the renovations, and you could use a place to stay." I stared at him, afraid to hope. "Why would you do that for me?" He smiled, and for the first time in months, I felt something other than fear in my chest. Because everyone deserves a second chance. Because kindness is the only thing that makes this world bearable. And because I think you're stronger than you know. That weekend, he drove me to see the house. It was a Victorian-era home on the edge of town, with a wraparound porch and tall windows that let in streams of golden light. The paint was peeling, the floorboards creaked, and half the rooms needed new wallpaper, but it was beautiful. It was possibility made manifest. We worked on it together, side by side, for months. He taught me how to sand and paint, how to lay tile and fix leaky faucets. I learned about electrical work and plumbing, about the satisfaction of taking something broken and making it whole again. My belly grew larger, as the house grew more beautiful, and I felt like I was building not just a place to live, but a life worth living. He was there when my daughter was born, pacing the hospital waiting room like an anxious grandfather. He was there when we brought her home to the house we'd created together. To the nursery we'd painted pale yellow, because we'd wanted it to be perfect for any baby. He was there for her first steps, her first words, her first day of school. And then, when she was 3, he was gone. A heart attack, sudden and swift. One moment he was laughing at something she'd said over breakfast, the next he was on the floor, and no amount of CPR or prayers could bring him back. I thought I would break, I thought I would crumble completely, but I didn't. I had a daughter to raise, a business to run, a life to build. The guest house he dreamed of became my reality. I welcomed travelers, families, people who needed a soft place to land. I cooked breakfasts, and changed linens, and listened to stories from all over the world. Years passed, my daughter grew up in that house, running through the halls, helping me serve breakfast to guests, learning that home isn't just a place, but a feeling you create for others. She went to college, got married, gave me grandchildren who now play in the same rooms where she once played. The guest house thrived. I expanded it, added more rooms, hired staff. I created the kind of place I'd wished for when I was 17 and desperate. A place where people were welcomed without judgment, where stories were heard and honored, where everyone got a second chance. I want to pause here for a moment, because this part of the story is important. If you've stayed with me this far, if you're feeling the weight of this journey, I want you to know that your story matters too. Whatever you're going through, whatever seems impossible right now, there's hope. There's always hope. Take a moment to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, because I share stories like this one regularly. Stories about resilience, about the power of starting over, about the way love can build something beautiful from the ruins of what came before. And now, 32 years later, they're here. I return to the sitting area with their tea, my hands steady, despite the storm inside me. They accept the cups gratefully, and I watch as my mother takes that first sip, adding the sugar exactly the way I remember. My father holds his cup with both hands, warming his fingers against the porcelain. "This is a beautiful place," my mother says, looking around at the antique furniture, the fresh flowers, the photographs of guests who've become friends over the years. "You've built something special here." "Thank you," I say, settling into the chair across from them. "It's taken many years." They tell me their story then, haltingly at first, then with growing desperation. How they lost their house in the economic downturn, how their savings disappeared, how they've been moving from place to place, taking odd jobs, trying to survive on Social Security that barely covers their medications. How they heard about my guest house, how someone told them I might have work for people willing to do whatever needs doing. "We're not proud people anymore," my father says, his voice rough with emotion. "We can't afford to be, we just need a chance." I listen to them, really listen, and I hear something I never heard when I was 17. I hear fear. I hear regret. I hear the weight of years and choices and consequences they never expected to face. "We had a daughter once," my mother says, suddenly, her voice so soft I almost miss it. We made mistakes. We were young ourselves, and scared, and we thought we were protecting our family, our reputation, but we were wrong. We were so wrong." She looks up at me, and for a moment, I think she sees something familiar in my face. But then she looks away, lost in her own memories. "We've regretted it every day since," my father says. "Every single day. We don't even know if she's alive, if she's okay, if she ever had the baby she was carrying. We threw away our own child because we were too proud, too afraid of what people would think." I feel tears burning behind my eyes, but I don't let them fall. "We can't change the past," my mother continues, "but we hoped. We hoped that maybe, somewhere, someone would show us the kindness we failed to show her. That maybe we could earn some small redemption by being useful, by working hard, by trying to make amends in the only way we know how." I sit in silence for a long moment, watching them. They're broken people, aged by regret and hardship. They're nothing like the powerful, judgmental parents who threw me out all those years ago. They're just two elderly people who've learned, too late, the cost of their choices. "I have work," I tell them finally. "The pay isn't much, but it includes room and board. There's a small apartment above the garage that needs someone to look after it. The work would be cleaning, some cooking, helping with guests, maintaining the gardens." The relief on their faces is immediate and overwhelming. My mother starts to cry, quiet tears that she wipes away with the back of her hand. My father nods, his throat working as he tries to speak. "We won't let you down," he manages. "We'll work hard, we'll be grateful." "I know you will," I say. I show them to the apartment that evening. It's small but comfortable, with a kitchenette, and a view of the gardens. I provide them with linens and towels, show them how the heating system works, explain their duties. They listen carefully, asking questions, eager to please. As I'm about to leave, my mother touches my arm gently. "You're very kind," she says. "Kinder than we deserve. We won't forget this." I look at her, really look at her, and I see not the woman who rejected me, but a human being who's learned to recognize kindness, because she's known its absence. I see someone who's been humbled by life, who's learned the value of what she threw away. "Everyone deserves a second chance," I tell her, echoing words spoken to me so many years ago by a man who saved my life with his kindness. Over the following weeks, I watch them work. They're diligent, grateful, eager to prove themselves. My mother cleans rooms with the same meticulous attention she once brought to her own home. My father tends the gardens with gentle hands, coaxing life from the soil with patience and care. They're good with the guests, polite and helpful. They learn names, remember preferences, go out of their way to make people comfortable. They're becoming part of the fabric of this place I've built, this sanctuary I've created from the wreckage of my youth. One evening, as I'm doing paperwork in my office, I hear laughter from the garden. I look out the window and see my father teaching my granddaughter how to plant bulbs. His face animated as he explains how flowers sleep through winter and wake up in spring. My mother is beside them, holding a watering can, smiling in a way I haven't seen since I was a child myself, and something inside me begins to heal. I don't tell them who I am. Not yet. Maybe not ever, because this isn't about revenge or dramatic confrontations, or forcing them to face what they did. This is about grace. This is about the way time can change people, the way suffering can teach compassion, the way redemption can grow quietly, in the spaces between what was and what might still be. They're different people now. We all are. The scared, proud parents, who couldn't see past their own fear, are gone. Replaced by these gentle, grateful souls, who've learned to value kindness above reputation. The broken, desperate girl they rejected is gone too. Replaced by a woman who's learned to build, rather than destroy. To welcome rather than turn away. Some nights I sit on my porch, and watch them in their little apartment, see the light from their windows spilling across the garden I've tended for decades. I think about the girl I was, sleeping in shelters, washing dishes with raw hands, believing she was worthless because the people who should have loved her most had said she was. I think about the man who saved me, who saw something worth saving when I couldn't see it myself. I think about the house we built together, the life we created, the legacy of kindness he left behind, and I think about forgiveness. Not the dramatic, tearful kind you see in movies, but the quiet, daily kind that grows like flowers in spring, slowly, naturally, when the conditions are right. My parents are here, in the sanctuary I built from the ashes of their rejection. They're safe, they're useful, they're learning to be the people they should have been all along. And maybe, in some small way, I'm learning to be the person I was meant to be too. The person who chooses kindness over bitterness. The person who offers second chances because she knows how precious they are. The person who builds rather than destroys, who welcomes rather than turns away, who understands that grace isn't earned, it's given. Freely, because that's what makes us human. That's the story I wanted to share with you today. Not a story about dramatic confrontations or perfect justice, but about the quiet power of grace, the way love can transform everything it touches. Even especially the things that seem beyond saving. If this story has moved you, if it's reminded you of the power of second chances in your own life, please take a moment to share it. Leave a comment about your own experiences with forgiveness, with starting over, with the people who showed you kindness when you needed it most. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel for more stories about resilience, redemption, and the beautiful complexity of human hearts. Because we all deserve second chances. We all deserve to be seen, to be valued, to be loved. And sometimes, the greatest victories aren't won through conflict, but through the quiet, persistent choice to build something beautiful from the ruins of what came before. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here, for caring, for believing in the power of grace, to transform even the most broken things into something whole and beautiful, and worthy of love. This is what redemption looks like. This is what grace can do. This is what happens when we choose to plant flowers in the places where we were once wounded. When we choose to build sanctuaries where others can find the kindness we once needed for ourselves. And maybe, just maybe, this is what healing looks like too.